Hello there, and welcome to my latest review for the TV series Agatha Christie's Poirot. This review focuses on Series 1, Episode 3, The Adventure of Johnny Waverly. The third episode of the series is my least favorite episode of the series to date. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers in this review, so if you haven't watched the episode or read the original short story, there will be a spoiler warning later before I get into the nitty-gritty of the episode's central mystery. Before diving into my review, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'm a small channel, so every subscription and like helps me grow the channel. Thank you. The original short story, The Adventure of Johnny Waverly, was published in The Sketch in October of 1923. 2 years later, it was published in the Blue Book magazine in June of 1925 in the US. Since then, The Adventure of Johnny Waverly is most often included in the short story collections of Christie's work, such as Three Blind Mice and Other Stories in 1950 and Poirot's Early Cases in 1974. You can find links in the description below for the DVD collection of Series 1 and the audiobook for Hercule Poirot, The Complete Short Stories, which I highly recommend since both Hugh Fraser and David Suchet lend their voices to reading the full collection of Poirot short stories. The TV version of The Adventure of Johnny Waverly is a somewhat faithful adaptation of the short story. In the short story, Inspector McNeil is the main Scotland Yard detective, but he's replaced in this story with the recurring character of Inspector Japp. Miss Lemon, Poirot's fastidious secretary, is inserted in the story as well, despite not being in the original source material. The biggest change is how the events of the story play out, which I will get to later in the review. The story itself is restructured from the sequence of events in the short story, but the main culprit remains the same, which adds its own kind of snarl to the proceedings. The main premise of the story is the kidnapping of Johnny Waverly, the young son of a country squire, Marcus Waverly, and his wife, Ada. The Waverly name is an old one, long connected to a country estate called Waverly Manor, and the family once owned a significant chunk of the countryside in Surrey. Since then, though, the Waverly name has fallen on hard times, with Waverly Manor in need of repairs that have only been half completed, and their ownership of the land in the surrounding area reduced significantly. The biggest difference between the short story and the TV adaptation is that in the short story, the kidnapping has already occurred, and Poirot is brought in by Ada Waverly to investigate Johnny's disappearance. For the TV episode, the letters threatening to kidnap Johnny unless a certain amount of money is paid out prompt Marcus Waverly to seek out protection from Scotland Yard, specifically Inspector Japp. When Japp refuses to take it seriously, Mr. Waverly decides to engage the services of Hercule Poirot to help prevent Johnny's kidnapping. Here's where I get into spoilers, because the restructuring of who involves Poirot and why is one of the reasons I don't like this episode as much as I have the previous two. The short story this episode is based on takes place after the kidnapping of Johnny Waverly has occurred, and the ransom request has been delivered. The letters warning of the upcoming kidnapping and demanding money still appear in the episode as they did in the short story. My issue with the episode is that rather than having Poirot investigate the aftermath of the kidnapping, he is called in to prevent the kidnapping. And in the TV episode, Poirot is hired by the kidnapper, Mr. Marcus Waverly, who is also the kidnapper in the short story as well. The tension of the TV episode for The Adventure of Johnny Waverly is meant to be built around whether or not the child will be kidnapped. Unfortunately, to do this, several things are done that make things rather unbelievable. First, Inspector Japp arrives with a cadre of Scotland Yard cops to provide protection, despite turning down the opportunity to assist in protecting young Johnny at the request of his parents earlier in the episode. Japp's explanation for why he appears is nothing more than a hand wave to make sure the TV episode aligns with the short story. Another factor that makes no sense is Hastings and Poirot leaving Waverly Manor 3 hours before the kidnapping is supposed to occur so they can ask questions of the people who have been renovating the manor house and to get a proper breakfast. After 2 episodes, I feel it's been established that Poirot would not have abandoned this job just to go have a spot of breakfast. For me, it feels very out of character based on the man we've seen in the previous 2 episodes. The reasoning behind the kidnapping is the same in the TV episode as it is in the short story. Marcus Waverly, despite coming from a long lineage of landowners, is nearly broke. His wife Ada is the one who holds the purse strings, and she is exceptionally frugal. The renovations to Waverly Manor were halted at her request because she did not wish to pay for it. Marcus, along with his butler Treadwell and Johnny's nurse Jessie Withers, were all involved in the kidnapping in order to pry money from Ada Waverly to complete the renovations on Waverly Manor and bolster Marcus's finances. It's not the most ingenious plot Agatha Christie ever devised, but it's serviceable. However, it makes no sense that the man behind the kidnapping, Marcus, would go to such lengths to try and prevent his own scheme. By the time Poirot is brought into the story, Marcus and Jessie have sent multiple letters warning of a kidnapping, each with an increasingly larger amount of money requested. Ada refused to budge or pay off the would-be kidnappers. You could chalk Marcus's move of going to Scotland Yard and Poirot as simply playing the part of the concerned husband and father, but I attribute it more to poor writing on the part of Clive Exton, the man who adapted the short story to create this episode. Marcus Waverly acts out of desperation rather than malice or wanting to cause genuine harm to his son. Perhaps that is enough for another viewer of this episode to let the odd structure and plot points pass. Overall, I would say The Adventure of Johnny Waverly is a 4 out of 10 for me, the lowest mark I've given for the series so far. The lower score is largely due to the changes in the plot structure of the story that doesn't really work for me in terms of a mystery. David Suchet, it continues to be a fun watch along with Hugh Fraser as Hastings, but even their performances are not enough to make this an enjoyable episode of mystery television for me. Thanks for taking the time to watch and listen to this review. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified when I drop new content. Also check out my other channel, the King's Square TTRPG channel, for tabletop role-playing game content. You can also sign up for my Patreon and get early access to my YouTube scripts, as well as access to exclusive reviews and writings of mine. Have a great day.